Are you ready for the weekend yet? We have events, news, and a guest for you to enjoy this Lake Life weekend. Hello and welcome to another episode of Lake Life Weekend Podcast. I'm Dirk, I'm your host, and today we will have with us Scott Hennen from AM 1100 The Flag, and we talked about his career in radio broadcasting, his daily show, and how it is to own a radio station, which is part of many people's lives here in Lakes Country because the signal is so strong it reaches up to Bemidji. So please stay tuned for this. We are very excited to invite you to our expo coming to Fargo March 22nd, 23rd, Friday, Saturday, in just a couple of weeks. We have about 50 vendors on floor. We have a food court. We have live program on stage. We have a beanbag tournament. Please go to explorelakelife.com to sign up for the tournament. We have a Fargo Brewing beer bar, and we have the Crop Dusters on stage Friday night from 6 to 8. And thanks to Choice Bank, this event is free of admission. We have a lot of program, a lot of vendors on the floor, and now we need you to have a lot of fun. So please come March 22nd, 23rd. Go to our website explorelakelife.com for more details. Fargo Downtown Civic Center. And now I don't want to keep this much longer for our interview with Scott Hennen. Enjoy and have a great weekend ahead. Hello, welcome to our interview part. I'm here with Scott Hennen. Hi, Scott.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for joining us. You were just in our location, in our shop, broadcasting, and I invited you for a podcast, not really to talk about your program, we'll definitely touch it, but more about your story. You and your family own a radio station. You broadcast into Lakes Country, so I guess everybody knows you and your program, The Flag. So I thought I'd capture the behind the scenes. Who is Scott? Where is he from? What is his lake life all about? And just tell us, where are you from? How did you start to be a radio broadcaster?
So I was born into a radio family. Literally, my birth announcement had a microphone on it because my parents were in the business at the time. My dad was graduate of Brown Institute, famous broadcast school down in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. Mm-hmm. And he went to work in Beloit, Wisconsin in 1962 and went from there to Pipestone, Minnesota. I was born when they were in Pipestone, and my earliest memories are being around a radio station. So that's really all I've done, been in the radio business since I was little, and part-time since I was 12 years old,
really?
And full-time since I was a freshman in high school.
Really?
Yeah.
So where's Pipestone?
Pipestone would be in southwest Minnesota.
Okay.
Yeah, down there. So lived in Minnesota for a number of years, then over to Laverne, then came up to Montevideo, Minnesota, which would be more west central.
Yeah.
Moved from Montevideo to Clarinda, Iowa for a year and a half. Kind of became radio gypsies.
Okay.
My dad was trying to build a different radio station and compete with his previous employer, which doesn't ever go real well. And so a lot of regulatory hoops to jump through and some legal things to try and get done. So in the meantime, he went down to run a radio station in Clarinda, Iowa for a year and a half and kind of spruce one up that needed a little help. And then here on South Dakota for a year and a half. And then we came back to Montevideo, my hometown where I graduated from high school there. So it was, actually I look back, I loved every minute of it because, I did feel a little like a gypsy, but it was you met new people, and I went to 3 different high schools in 3 years. And, I didn't feel like I was missing anything,
How big is your family? Do you have siblings?
Yes, I do. I'm the oldest, and I have 3 siblings.
Okay.
And the youngest is my little brother Chris, who's 76, 2 girls in between us. So it was interesting time, and of course many of them were in radio for a while, none right now. But it was truly a radio family. We grew up at the radio station.
So where's your headquarters then now for the radio station?
It's in Fargo.
That's what I thought.
Yep, it's on I-29. between Thunder Road and the new border states. We just moved in December into a new building, new facility.
From downtown, correct?
We were downtown from 2008 until 2012, and that project, the downtown building, was actually a building that was that I did in a different partnership. I left that partnership, was bought out of my contract and left, and then my previous partners sold the radio station back to us, and so we now have. There was at one time 4 radio stations with that. We just bought the one back, AM 1100 The Flag, and decided to specialize in talk radio.
All right. And your reach is, help me on the map, you reach up to Bemidji?
Yeah, our signal it's a 50,000 watt AM signal daytime, so it's a giant signal daytime. In fact, biggest single radio signal in western Minnesota.
Really?
Really covers, Marshall, Minnesota to Warroad and stretched out to the east to St. Cloud. I've listened to it clear as a bell in downtown Minneapolis, so it's got a pretty good signal into Minnesota during the day. North Dakota, about to Steele, just about, not quite to Bismarck, but a good chunk, then down into South Dakota as well. So it's got a good signal.
Okay, and then I'm an amateur. Like, where is the antenna? Is it where
so it's in Sabin, Minnesota.
Ah.
Yeah, out not too far, obviously, from Fargo-Moorhead Metro, but there's two towers there that send it out. AM radio stations rely on ground conductivity. That's how they get the signal out. So you want to, you're going there. FMs have to have height. So they're the larger towers that want to be as high as they possibly can on a mountain, if they can, to send the signal the furthest. AM, it's all about the ground. So they're shorter towers, usually work in good farm fields.
Okay. Interesting. And then just some technology talk. So how does that work? Because now we take everything for granted. We have the world on our fingertips nowadays. How does a radio work? I mean, I don't even know if my 10-year-old son understands radio, because all he knows is YouTube and the internet, right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
So you send it through a copper wire to the tower, and it gets transformed, and then it's
sends out on waves, on radio waves, modulated waves, AM and FM modulation. And obviously then the receivers pick that up. But, the industry has also adapted very well, I think, to, hey, people get things, their content in many different ways. So, we podcast all of our shows and put those up. We have apps for people to listen online.
Live stream on the website.
Live stream, yep. So a lot of different ways for people to do that.
So you pretty much own a media company? I mean, you are a media company. Right,
and that's, at one time we were a radio station, but we're really more of a media company now, you're right. And the entity is co-owned by myself and my broadcast partner, Steve Hallstrom. Not broadcast partner, but business partner, but he's on the air in the morning.
I see.
I'm on the air right after him at 9, but he does our morning show. But he's the president, managing partner. I'm, a partner and do a lot of work with clients, just helping them determine how to build their business, and also obviously on the air. My role is sort of, all right, here's the problem. What should we do to fix it? Well, we could do that. We could do this. We should, try that, and more on the creative side. So love it. Love what we do, and it's great fun. We have a radio station also out in the Bakken, in the middle of all that oil development going on there. We bought KTGO a number of years ago, and that's been around in the oil capital of North Dakota, Tioga, North Dakota, for a lot of years. And we program into 2 other radio stations. They're iHeart media stations, KFire 550, which is the oldest radio station in North Dakota. It is also got a huge signal, 5 states, 2 Canadian provinces, and then KLTC in Dickinson. So 2 that we own and operate, 2 that we program into with the shows What's on Your Mind, Energy Matters. And then we also have an entity called Fieldstone Group. That's a consulting group mainly. Work with a lot of energy companies, some companies out of Washington, D.C., different folks that are looking for advocacy and advice on, how to reach the grassroots. So, yeah.
So public relations.
Yeah.
Lobbyism, public.
Yeah, we don't lobby necessarily, but we're basically advising folks on how they can better get their message out.
Right.
Doing the consulting. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. So how big is a company like that today? Is it like
22 employees?
Okay.
Right now, large. Growing all the time. Yeah. Okay. And invite you to come see our studios sometime.
I would love to.
The office, it's a fun place. Got a little group space there, team space. Everybody's out there having a good time, and working hard, a lot of energy. It's a fun group.
So you have editors, and like, how does that work? Before we receive your program here in Lakes Country, let's say, is there obviously journalists, or how is that? How does a day in a radio station look like before the people receive your message?
Yeah, so we have majority of our programs are opinion programs.
Yeah.
So while we have news readers, we don't focus a lot on the news gathering. Obviously, we have newsmakers on, so you're asking questions that make news, but it isn't necessarily news in the traditional sense. But the worker bees, if you will, would be more the producer, more the engineer, making sure everything's, what cuts do I have from, the testimony of somebody in Congress today, or, I want to ask this guest about that, so I need the audio clip, So, the producer's going to grab that. The engineer's going to get it ready to play. They're doing that type of work for the hosts to then get on and basically conduct the orchestra, if you will. I mean, kind of give your own opinions, ask for opinions from listeners, take calls, and just really facilitate the conversation more than anything. I always say talk radio, in my mind, was the original social media.
Right.
Because you can talk back to it. It's the only media you can talk back to, know.
It's interactive.
Yep. You call, you text, you're doing that. So it's very much like social media in that regard, whereas a newspaper, you can write a letter to an editor, but you're going to get delayed gratification there, right?
Right.
It's going to go in 2 weeks later, or television newscast you can't talk back to, but radio you can.
Yeah. Well, nothing, in my opinion. I mean, the internet is 20 years old. We're having all those hypes and talks about big social media networks. And as you said, that is actually not really new. I mean, we're just distributing information in new channels.
Right.
I mean, there was a book press invented hundreds of years ago, Gutenberg. Like we distribute. And you distribute over radio, but now you just need to add another media, a podcast or the internet. The real
jewel is the content.
Yes.
And being different and being unique and having the following.
Yes.
And then how it gets out is sort of just kind of the means to the end. But yeah.
Right. So speaking of following and engagement, I'm curious. So how many people listen, or how big is the audience?
So it's a bit of a challenge to answer that question in the sense we have 4 radio stations, 2 of which are subscribers to the Nielsen reports, 2 of which are not. So we usually have to do it basically, we'll go to the advertising agencies and we'll say, hey, can you cobble all that information together? Because we can't do it for that station, but we can do it for our own, and so they end up putting it together. So the highest rated show, just because it's on 4 radio stations, is What's on Your Mind, and the last estimate I saw was 150,000 listeners a week to that show. And then so basically what you do is you take that show and then the morning show, and then Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, our sports programming, all those, and put them together and try to come up with some semblance. It's funny, you don't really hear, I don't have advertisers come to me and say, how many listeners do you have?
Yeah.
They want to know, tell me about your listener. What is your listener? What
right.
It's more of, is this audience receptive? And that's what we sell. We sell the quality of the audience before we talk about numbers or anything else, because in our case, the people that are buying generally are people that aren't looking for the best bargain, aren't necessarily kind of a typical consumer like a Walmart or a Target. They're more of a savvy buyer. They want a good product. They're willing to pay a fair price for it. They aren't going to negotiate. They just, it's going to be a fairly quick transaction. Just get them what they want,
I mean, I know you run a business, obviously, and you need to make a living. You have a family, but I believe, listening or hearing you are content driven, and you believe in sending a message, right?
Yes.
So what, like, your drive is your program, and you were successful, like an influencer. You have a following that want to hear your opinion, and the news. Like, how do you identify yourself? Like, I mean, I almost tried to do that, but like, how do you see yourself actually as a broadcast professional?
Yeah, I mean, the technical industry term would be talk show host.
Yeah, talk show host.
Right. But obviously a commentator, would be another example of that. I don't really think about it too much, but I I have strong opinions. I've been on doing talk radio since 1986.
1986.
So a long time. And when you do that, you just learn to sort of, okay, what's my gut feel of this? Where does my compass point me? And I can have that down in 30 seconds. In other words, you can tell me, a scenario. I believe this. My friend believes this. Who's right, Scott? I would say, I have that out in a nanosecond to say, let me tell you what I think. It's just kind of what you do. It's in your DNA to do it that way. So, influencer is a compliment, because I think if your opinion is well thought out enough, that it will influence people and say, I never thought of that, but I agree with him. And the thing you hear most often in talk radio is, I believe what you believe, but I didn't really know that until I heard you, and then I help.
Right.
When you talk, I can. It tells me, oh, that's how I think, and then I feel some sort of almost joy to have the idea that other people think like I do out there, right? And then you kind of build on it and you get more comfortable with your thoughts. So it's an awesome responsibility, but I do like it.
But you are an influencer, obviously. If you reach 150,000 unique listeners in a week, and I mean, influencers is a modern term where we have influencers on Instagram wearing a T-shirt, and all of a sudden everybody wants that T-shirt. But you are an influencer by opinion. You talk radio. Yeah. In your history of 30 plus years as a host. When did you burn your fingers? How has it been challenging? Did you, give us an insight.
I'll give you one. And if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't go there, even though I don't believe that I said anything that was wrong. But there was a candidate for Secretary of State in North Dakota that was running against the incumbent. It was a younger fellow. I knew him, just a delightful guy. Him and his wife, young family, just the whole thing, and he really was passionate about wanting to get into politics. So he decided to challenge the sitting, long-time Secretary of State, and I supported him, despite some people getting upset with me because I didn't go with the traditional candidate, and I did so because I knew him and I'd seen him. I'd actually been on a retreat with him. I did a retreat one time down by the Twin Cities it was a silent retreat. A Catholic silent retreat, and I went down there and really enjoyed it. He was there, and I knew him well before that. But anyway, long story short, it was found out a number of years earlier, had been arrested for peering into some windows at a dorm at NDSU, and obviously a women's dorm where the women were undressing, and he's, and had been arrested for it, and he hadn't told anybody about it, hadn't done anything with it, okay? And so he came out and he apologized, and then he had to decide, am I still going to run for this or am I not, right? And I said some version of this, Dirk. I said, it's very unfortunate, obviously, that he didn't tell people this so you could have that decision on the front end. But we find out now, and now we've got to make a judgment. Is he sorry? Is he not? Why didn't he tell anybody? Would you have told somebody? Whatever, right? Because it's sad. Now, I also presented some data points because I'd gone to a graduation party the weekend after this broke. And the chatter was about this event. And the women at the graduation party, commenting about this man looking in the windows, said something like the following over and over. If you don't want anybody to look at you, close the windows. Don't blame the guy outside the window. Close the curtain. Yeah, close the curtain. Don't. So I'm like, wow, if I said that, that would sound horrible. But this is a woman saying it, right? And maybe they weren't ready to throw him to the wolves. So I told the story on the air. I said, these women say that, and all I know is if the guy says I'm sorry, and I screwed up and I shouldn't have done it, I'm going to consider that. I don't think he's got a death sentence from having done that to ever be able to do anything ever again, right?
Of course, as a Christian.
Right? Yeah, you're saying there's some forgiveness there.
Absolutely.
I said what's interesting is this is a battle to run against a Democratic candidate who is gay, and I hold 0 against the candidate because of his chosen sexuality. What I don't care for is this idea that because he is very vocal in his sexuality, that it has to be this sort of thing always, right? I mean, this is something that drives me a little crazy with the whole rainbow agenda. Look, I don't want to know, right? I mean, you just do what you do and don't make this big giant thing out of it with flags and parades and everything else. So I explaining the agenda part of that what bothers me. Not that individual is. Now, my Catholic faith teaches me that's a sin. If one man is with another man, it's biblically referred to many times. So do I hate you? Do I not love you? Because no, but I'm just going to tell you that's what my belief is. Absolutely. And I'm going to be true. I'm going to actually tell you this. So I'm telling this whole story on the air like this, right? And I'm saying, isn't it ironic? This guy is sorry. He's atoned for his sin. He's Catholic. He's probably been to a confessional and said, I'm sorry. So he's owned up to it and done. This guy over here is in a relationship that's outside marriage that is a sin.
In your opinion,
right? Yeah, by the faith that I believe, right? That you look in the Bible, and so I'm not trying to win that debate because I'm just going to tell you what I believe.
Right.
But so here's one guy over here that is in my view very black and white sinned. The other guy over here said he's sorry, and we're acting like this guy's the hero over here. How does that work? So I was just walking through that whole thing. Well, it ended up I'm encouraging people to look into windows, and it was the girl's fault because she didn't shut the deal, and how could I say what I said about him and being gay and everything else, and I mean 3 horrific letters to the editor. There were opinion pieces by all the Democratic operative types, just barrage from that one thing, and so I guess just for the sake of my family, I probably wouldn't go there again, and I'd give you that as an example of burned figures. I apologize for the long story, but
no. What's interesting is, you are on the air, you do a live program, so how quick can you bite your tongue or not? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's a reaction time of kind of driving. There's a deer. So like when you,
I've learned over the years to just be still. And in other words, somebody will call and they're going to spew and they're mad and they're saying this, that, and the other thing. And there was a time in my career I would have pounced and just said, knock it off, let's go, let's battle right now. Now I just sort of let them go best I can. Interject at a time where there's a little bit of a pause and just say, can I tell you why I don't agree with you? Can we talk about this? And then try to have the conversation. 9 times out of 10, the person buries themselves. They're just off the rails, spitting nails mad, and so then tons of people call and say, "What a bozo! What an idiot! What a da 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 da." So I try to just take a deep breath,
okay.
Before I end up going there. The nice thing is that I've never really struggled to know what I believe. Right?
Yeah.
So I know who I am. I'm grounded in what I believe, and so it's pretty easy when you're just saying who you are.
Well, you have a unique situation. You are very established. I keep saying influencer. You are a figure. You are an anchor. You have your following. I guess people also very much they have an expectation now, of what you would say, could say. But you probably transformed. I mean, if you started helping in a radio station age 12 and you learned, you saw, you admired your father probably or who like others, and you grew into becoming a broadcaster, and now you're there 30 years. And looking back at all that history or an experience, like what is your drive? Or again, like what do you want to... how do I say that? Stimulate. Like in my culture, I'm from Germany. We are taught at school to question everything, actually, and reflect. I oftentimes question too much for the culture that I'm exposed to in the Midwest, and people misunderstand me. I feel they clearly don't misunderstand me because I just questioned everything. But like in your position, do you want to stimulate people to? Because your program is common sense. Like, do you actually want to initiate a thought process? Do you want to... Even people could prove you wrong. I mean, you may be opinionated. I think we could. So how do you feel like when you, and with your responsibility to reach so many people, are you driven to actually like elevate them?
Yeah, I mean that's what I would hope. I mean, I would hope I elevate them. Educate sounds like I'm indoctrinating. I don't mean that, but I mean, in other words, here's what I believe. Here's why I believe it, and come along. You know, let's go for this ride, and see if people do that. I also have strong faith, and you know, I don't take a 2x4 to people with that. But when the opportunity presents itself, I'm not going to be afraid to, share, something that might lift them up, that might give them a little bit of a, we've had people call and cry about something, or a story about a suicide or whatever, and why would God do this? And I'll just break right in to say, look, we're not supposed to understand why God does what He does, right? Mm-hmm. But He loves you. He loves your son. He loves the one you lost, and just kind of try and walk it through with them. So I'm not afraid to do that. If I had any quote unquote agenda with what I hope to accomplish, it would be that. It would be that that I do things that are worthy of my Creator. That the way God wants me to operate with that power of the microphone. And some people might say, well, wait a minute, you're a Donald Trump fan. You like President Trump, you like Republican politics, and all they want to do is starve children and throw old people over the cliff. And I would say, well, that's the persona. That's not right. I mean, I actually think I would argue, for instance, if we were sitting here saying who's better, Democrats or Republicans, I would say most Democrats are supporters of, champions of, promoters of, funders of government programs. They believe that we need more programs to help people. I actually believe that enslaves people in a way, that puts chains around them, that gets them dependent on a government program, when I would much rather they take advantage of all the awesome opportunity that we have in America to build their own life and not be dependent on the government or anything, right? So who's right, who's wrong, I don't know. History will decide that. But my point is, that's what I'd want them to think, and think a little bit differently. Of there's nothing dark or harsh or mean about wanting people to realize the American dream and live. And so that would probably be the closest thing I'd say to it, Dirk, of an agenda, if you will, or overall. Obviously, digging into political things is, if a story is. Russian collusion from Donald Trump. Okay, well, what makes you think there was Russian collusion? I want you to know that. Well, it's all over the TV. That's all they talk about. Well, but I know, but what's the genesis of that? Where did they get that it's Russian collusion? And we'll go way down here and we'll find the Democratic Party funding a dossier that they then, give to FISA to get an investigation going, and all of a sudden all these seeds have been planted. So I like to kind of dig into it a little bit and say, here's why I do. And it'd be easy just to say, oh, there's Russian collusion because somebody on TV said there was, but I don't want them to.
So I understand, and I'm with you there. So you're actually questioning everything, in a way, and digging in to find the truth, or like, No, I get that's good. You are traveling a lot. You came to Perm today. I think every Monday you were in Bismarck. You have an assistant with you at all times, it seems. You're a very busy man. How do you rejuvenate? How do you balance life? You mentioned a retreat that you attended. I actually have a close friend, actually my mentor, and he goes on those retreats. I have heard of those. I've never attended one. So how do you balance? Do you balance lake? Do you balance with your family at home? You have a dog yourself. Explain, how does that work as a high energy person like you, confronted with so many things?
So it's not easy. I will say that because my wheels are always turning. Mm-hmm. I'm always thinking about that next thing. But I've gotten better the older I've gotten. I'm 54 now, of just being able to, unplug a little bit. My wife one day told me my phone, to her is like the other woman, right? And it really can be, because you just, get so in other words, I love them. I love what they did in allowing me to do what I need to do anywhere that I'm at, right? But on the other hand, that also takes me away sometimes from things that are, family moments. So I try really hard to balance it. Lake life has been a part of that rejuvenation. Grew up on Lake Minnewaska down by Glenwood, Minnesota.
Okay.
Yeah, and we lived in Montevideo, but we'd go there every weekend. Folks bought a cabin there that was really neat. And when I moved to Fargo, started spending a lot of time at Lake Sally, Lake Melissa, and really was on West McDonald for a time. So I love that. Now, when I was single, I loved it in a different way. I loved it in I'm going to the Hotel Shoreham, I'm going to Zorba's, I'm going to, let's go out there and see who I can bump into and see and be seen kind of deal, right? And pick up material for the show. As I've gotten older, I love we go to Union Lake now, which is a little further up north and not much around it. And it's just perfect, just quiet and, a great time to watch the kids skiing or having their fun and, hop on a jet ski. There's nothing like that first boat ride or that first jet ski ride after a long weekend. I'll never forget, I remember when it finally hit me. I would come from Grand Forks after long weeks, and I would round the bend at Lake Sally where you finally could see the water. Yeah. So I'd come south off 10 and then, at Audubon there, and you'd come around the bend and you'd see all the water.
Yeah.
And I always felt like the entire weight of the world was lifting off my shoulders.
Yeah.
Just from that first view rounding the corner of the lake. Feel the same way when I hop on a jet ski and just go,
Yeah.
So the lakes have been an important part of that for sure. I don't sit still well, so I can't do the hammock thing or whatever, but, like Perham, my gosh, what an incredible community. I'm most sad about the hardware store closing, though, because I could spend hours there.
Yeah.
I did get there for the final sale and buy a few things really cheap.
Really?
Yeah. But no, it's fun, too, to kind of come in and kick I love going out to eat, finding a good spot to eat, heading over to Vergas or going, really love that. Outside of lake season, because our family isn't much of we just have one daughter at home now. My wife also grew up on a lake, and her folks, that's the cabin we go to now at Union. We have a graduate from UND last year, so he's just now in the workforce. Then we have a sophomore at Yale, actually, and we have a sophomore in high school.
I see.
So only one home now, but in the summers they're around, and we just, we go there. Outside the summers, hockey, UND hockey. Go up to Grand Forks a lot.
Yeah.
Check that out. And at home,
sports is a balance to you, like those events
you
attended to rejuvenate?
Yeah, watch the game, see some friends, usually go with the kids. I try as much as possible when I'm not engaged on the air to be present for my wife, be present for my daughter, whatever is there. It's just, it's a constant challenge, trust me. But I mean, I say that till I walk in there, just be present for them. Just, tendency to come in and want to talk 100 miles an hour about my day. Try not to. Just, how was their day? Listen. Be still. So that's the drill.
But you also said a key word, and I feel the energy. You can hear it. I think everybody knows you a little bit better. You have a jet ski.
Oh yes.
So you love the motorized. You like the noise. I'm the opposite. Like I
get in the kayak.
I have a kayak. I have a canoe, and I like the silence.
It's funny. The noise makes me crazy. I mean, the lack of noise makes me crazy.
Really?
So the lack of noise is actually loud for me.
Right.
Like I would not last on the beach. I'd have to grab the book or whatever. I couldn't just take it in. Now my wife's the exact opposite. So I'm an extrovert in a house full of introverts.
Okay.
They love the quiet. But
yeah.
They don't get it much with me around, unfortunately.
Interesting. Have you ever participated in races, like jet ski races?
No. It's just
so
a fart around, let your hair go, flying, and putts around the lake, go look at whatever, see what's new.
Yeah. So, speaking of Fargo, tell us a little bit. Like the culture in Fargo seems everybody is at the lake in the summer. It's also almost lake culture, whether it's North Dakota or not. But we are all driven here. Tell us a little bit about what do you think about Fargo, like how it has transformed. And that's your home now, right?
It is. Yep. I've been in Fargo since 2001. And Fargo's a great city, great community. I mean, really, the whole West Fargo, fastest growing city in North Dakota. You got Horace, which is exploding. You got The whole bedroom community around it is really something. And obviously a lot of agrarian roots and a lot of things, manufacturing with Case IH and Bobcat. But downtown very cosmopolitan. You're right about it having a lake culture because Fargo empties out on the weekend of the summer. I mean, it's like, where is everybody? You can get in a restaurant with no wait, the whole thing. So
when I moved there 10 years ago, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
It's empty.
It is.
I go to Fargo on the weekends from Lakes Country because it's so quiet.
Well, there's something to that, too. There's something to that for sure. Yeah. No, I'm impressed with what Fargo has happened. Doug Burgum, obviously, and that other folks like the old Broadway owners, Randy Thorson and Warren Ackley, those kind of pioneers of downtown, really started something, and it's pretty cool. It's really amazing. Now a skyscraper going up for crying out loud in Block 9. I mean, it's amazing. But now every corner of Fargo is growing and has its own little kind of cosmopolitan feel to it. Yeah, so it's a fun town to live in, no doubt about it. See, the weird thing is I spent 18 years in Grand Forks hating Fargo. Oh. Because if you live in Grand Forks, you usually hate Fargo.
You're
jealous. Thing? Yeah, the UND NDSU thing. They get everything. 2 interstates. It's busier.
Oh, really?
But then we quickly came down and said, wow, wouldn't live anywhere else.
Really?
Yeah, and of course our kids, I mentioned my daughter. Our daughter Hannah is at Yale. Catholic school education, John Paul II schools. That's the reason she's there. It's not me. It's not her mom. It's, the education she got there, the experiences she got there, and got accepted there. It's just amazing. So the kids have had, a great school, and just a great community to grow up in.
Yeah, I think so too. A little back to your media company. Where do you see the future of broadcasting, or how do you see the future of transmitting information?
Yeah, so I think broadcasting really is the mechanism of how something gets delivered, and really centered around radio and TV. Now, radio has been around forever. And it came after, TV came after, everybody thought it'd be done. Well, it hasn't been, right? So it just kind of continues to be there because it's mobile. Really, again, it was the mobile phone before the mobile phone was cool, So I just think it continues to win. That having been said, the focus clearly is on programming. What I do is different than what a country music station does. What and their personalities and the music they play is different than the topics I'm tackling, and the audience we attract. How do we use that to help businesses we work with grow? Knowing these parts go with that. It's how that all starts with content. That all starts with something that is tangible. And broadcasting is one way to get it out, but there's a lot of ways to get it out. The focus really has to be on being a content factory more than a broadcaster. Yeah.
So does your group, do you create new programs, new content? Like, let's say a dog show, and you talk about, I don't know.
Yeah.
How does that work? How do you create new program to keep the listeners, or how do you connect to the millennial versus your generation? Because I used to be an art dealer, for example, and when you're an art dealer and you like certain style, let's say, you can communicate that to your generation very well, not necessarily to people 2 generations ahead of you, because it's just too different. How do you stay connected to the generations, to the future of your own broadcasting media company to deliver content?
Well, one of the great things about talk radio is that you're talking to your audience every day.
Right.
So there's constant feedback, right? So you're sort of evolving with them. I mean, Donald Trump would be another good example, okay? So if I was to say, of all the time I've been on the air, most of the candidates that the listeners would say, I like this person and here's why, would be not at all like Donald Trump, right? Maybe a little bit Mitt Romney for the business side of it. I don't remember prior to that somebody with the business acumen, right? So a little bit there, but basically the style, the everything else. Well, I was first in Marco Rubio's camp, and then I was I like Ben Carson a lot, and okay, how about Ted Cruz, and now it's Donald Trump's turn. Our audience way ahead of that. And the reason they were is they were fed up with the way government operated. That, we're going to do this or we're going to do that, we'll do this, and they never do it. They don't end up doing it. And, it's like the border thing right now. Donald Trump didn't invent the crisis at the border. He inherited it.
Right.
He's saying, let's do something about it. And here's what I want to do. And what I said I'd do during the campaign. So that was a good example where the audience was way ahead of the Trump phenomenon. And I came to understand it. And it was out of total frustration. Right. It was, here's a guy that's willing to fight. And he might not be necessarily the kind of person I'd want to call my uncle. Or that I would, a New York developer, what does he do? He fights, right? And not everybody here in the good old Midwest is going to be a fighter, but they love the fact that somebody's fighting for them. And I think also the whole forgotten American thing. People really feel forgotten. They feel like they're left behind to the elites and people, who donate enough money to influence things, to get things done. And so here's a guy that came out and talked about the issues they care about and ran. So I learned from them, and that's how you can. I think you just stay ahead of it on where it's going by listening. And honestly, every day, 2.5 hours on the air, the thing that gives me the best charge is a caller in a story, right? And I can just sit there and listen, take it in, and say, wow. And every day somebody says something, I'm just like, wow.
So you're your audience is very engaged. You mentioned that a couple of times. So you think, or you fear that through the engagement of your audience, you're able to produce program? Like you're switching, not on the political, let's just say you...
Anything.
Like in 5 years, are you going to add another program? There's more programs than the 2 on your radio station, right? How do you stay connected? Or are you fearing to be able to connect to 20-year-olds?
Yeah, see, while, certainly we, like everybody, are wanting to find the millennials that are interested in what we do and make sure we're getting a content to them in a way that they can consume it, right? But I'm not going to go out and say, let's be the millennial station, because we're not going to be. We just got to find out with what we do, what are we? We're faith, family, freedom. We're those are our 3 prisms that we look through. The people that come to us, they don't want to hear trash talk or Viagra commercials or whatever. They want they're a little more buttoned down. They love the flag. They love America. They love the founding fathers. They love what I mean. And freedom and the faith side of it, very important to them. So that guides us. Now within those boundaries, you're obviously going to say, why aren't we doing a show about blank? Hey, all these people keep calling about their pets. Maybe we should do a pet podcast. And then you're doing a pet podcast through the prism of somebody that kind of believes like they do, and hey, I want to know more about that because I like him because of what he says during the day.
Well, your foundation, family, freedom, faith, that is your program, and that doesn't need to change. You just maybe reinterpret it, or like you just adjust to the audience at its times. Like you create a millennial program with the same elements, just maybe in a different language, maybe in a podcast format.
Yep.
Okay, I understand. So you're not changing your identity, of course. I'm just curious. I have you here right now.
Well, no, and honestly, one of the challenges you always want to be. I don't know if this happens in every industry, but in radio, if 2 people called and said you should do a pet show, we'd say, hey, everybody wants us to do a pet show. You got to be careful not to be all things to all people and just really have a tuned ear to. Boy, that is building. I've heard it enough times now that we ought to think about it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you splinter your core audience, and we're all about that core audience that just lives and dies in what we say, and expanding that.
Okay. Yeah. You think do you feel that your job grew, how do I say that? I think you're one of those people that your work is your life. That doesn't mean that you don't have a family life, but it makes you happy.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
live for it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's you.
Yeah, and especially the fact that we own it. My partner and I, we own it. We control it. We can say, do we want to go this way? Do we want to go that way? Should we hire this person? Should we not? You work like a dog, but it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. You're building something. It's a good time. You work like a dog for the hospital. You're working for somebody that really doesn't care. If you don't do it, they'll just hire somebody else. So I like that part of it. Absolutely.
Touchy question, maybe. Do you think one of your children can take that over, or how long will that be gone? Your Scott Hennen show. Like, what happens? Because you are a brand. You are the thing. How does that work? What do you think about the future?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'd love it. Our youngest daughter is the closest to sort of the personality that I have, and loves to sell, loves to loves to talk. So she would probably be the closest one because she's just a sophomore in high school, so she got a little ways to go, and we do too. And our daughter that graduates from Yale, I'm not sure she's going to want to come back to Fargo and run the a family company. You never know. But I just let the good Lord sort all that out. I think it'd be great, but we'll just see where it goes.
Well, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think I learned a lot more than I knew, and I think it was a very interesting insight in your life and what you do. I really appreciate it all the time. Very inspiring. Thank you.
I enjoyed it. Thank you. I love answering questions. Switch sides once in a while and just answer the questions and not know what's coming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, and I will take you up on a visit at your station.
Please do.
Thank you much.
Thanks.
Have a great weekend ahead.
Thanks, Dirk.
Yeah, this was already our newest episode of the Lake Life Weekend podcast. We sure hope you enjoyed it. Tune in again next week with another great guest and updates. Always check out our website, lakelifeweekend.com, and if you have some comments, please feel free to email us at hello@lakelifeweekend.com, and you have a wonderful weekend ahead.